My name is Mackenzie Hamilton, and I'm 25 years old. I thought I knew what family meant until I discovered 3 years of secret reunion photos on social media showing every relative celebrating without me. There they were at some luxury mountain lodge, laughing around elaborate dinner tables, playing games, creating memories I was never invited to share. The worst part? They used my late grandmother's inheritance to fund these exclusive gatherings while telling me the money was tied up in legal issues. As I scrolled through image after image of the family I thought loved me, my heart shattered into pieces I didn't think could ever be repaired. Before we dive deeper into this story of betrayal and ultimate triumph, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you or you've experienced family betrayal yourself, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will shock you to your core, and you won't want to miss how I turn the tables on the people who tried to destroy me. Growing up as an adopted child in the Hamilton family shaped every aspect of my identity, though I never truly understood how precarious my position was until that devastating evening. When my biological parents died in a horrific car crash, I was 7 years old, scared, and desperately needing stability that Robert and Linda Hamilton promised to provide. They welcomed me into their Denver home alongside their biological children, Ashley and Derek, who were 9 and 11 at the time. For 18 years, I believed I had earned my place in this family through academic achievements, thoughtful gestures, and unwavering loyalty to people I considered my true relatives. My career as an event coordinator flourished precisely because I understood the importance of bringing families together for meaningful celebrations. I had organized countless reunions, anniversaries, and milestone parties, pouring my heart into creating perfect moments for other families while secretly longing for those same experiences with my own. The irony wasn't lost on me later, when I realized I had been planning the very type of events my family was enjoying without me, using skills they would eventually steal and expertise they would later weaponize against me. That Tuesday evening in March started like any other, with me scrolling through social media after a long day coordinating a golden anniversary celebration for the Morrison family. Ashley's Instagram story appeared at the top of my feed, and what I saw there changed everything I believed about my life and relationships. The first photo showed a massive stone fireplace with stockings hung for everyone in the family, each embroidered with names I recognized except mine was nowhere to be seen. The next image revealed a dining room table set for 20 people, with place cards carefully arranged and elaborate centerpieces that looked professionally done. As I continued scrolling, the scope of their deception became increasingly clear and devastating. There were photos from what appeared to be 3 different reunion weekends, each more elaborate than the last. Uncle Frank was teaching the younger cousins how to fish off a private dock. Aunt Margaret was leading a cooking class in a gourmet kitchen that rivaled anything I had seen in luxury resorts. My supposed siblings Ashley and Derek were participating in organized games and activities, wearing matching family reunion t-shirts with designs I had never seen before. The location was clearly a high-end mountain lodge, complete with hot tubs, game rooms, and enough bedrooms to accommodate the entire extended Hamilton clan. Every single relative was present in these photos spanning 3 years, from my elderly great-aunt Ruth to the newest baby cousin born just 6 months ago. They had created new traditions, inside jokes, and shared experiences that formed the foundation of updated family bonds, all while deliberately excluding the person who had spent nearly 2 decades believing she belonged among them. My hands shook as I screenshot each image, building a digital evidence file of my own exclusion while trying to process the emotional devastation of this discovery. These weren't casual family get-togethers or impromptu gatherings where invitations might have been overlooked. These were meticulously planned events that required months of coordination, booking accommodations, arranging travel schedules, and organizing activities for multiple families across different states. The most crushing realization came when I noticed professional photography equipment in several background shots, indicating they had hired someone to document these special family moments permanently. They wanted to preserve these memories forever, just without any record of my existence among them. Every smile, Every embrace, every shared meal represented a conscious choice to exclude me from the family narrative they were actively constructing and celebrating. Unable to contain my confusion and hurt any longer, I called my best friend Jenna, who had been my closest confidant since college and knew my family well. Her phone rang several times before she answered with an unusually hesitant tone that should have warned me about what was coming. When I described the photos I had discovered and asked if she knew anything about these family reunions, the long pause that followed spoke volumes before she even uttered a single word. "Mackenzie, I'm so sorry," Jenna finally whispered, her voice cracking with obvious guilt and discomfort. "I've known about the reunions for over a year, but your parents made me promise never to tell you. They said it would hurt you more to know about events you couldn't attend, and I believed them when they claimed there were complicated family reasons for keeping these gatherings private." The first betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making my vision blur with tears I couldn't control. My best friend had been complicit in this elaborate deception, choosing family loyalty over our friendship and allowing me to continue living a lie while knowing the truth about my exclusion. She had listened to me talk about feeling disconnected from my family, had comforted me when I expressed confusion about why family relationships seemed strained, all while keeping this massive secret that explained everything I had been questioning. That night, I barely slept as my mind raced through every family interaction from the past 3 years, reinterpreting conversations and behaviors through the lens of this new knowledge. Suddenly, the inside jokes I didn't understand made perfect sense. The shared references to people and places I had never heard of now had context. The way conversations would stop when I entered rooms, the quick glances exchanged between relatives, the subtle exclusion from planning discussions about future family events all fell into place as pieces of a larger pattern of deliberate isolation. By morning, I had made the decision that would change everything. I was going to confront my family directly, demand explanations for their betrayal, and fight for my rightful place in the family I had loved unconditionally for 18 years. Little did I know that this confrontation would reveal betrayals far deeper and more calculated than anything I could have imagined. The Hamilton family home on Maple Street had always represented safety and belonging to me, but as I parked in the driveway that Thursday evening, it felt more like approaching enemy territory. The familiar red brick facade and white shutters that had welcomed me home from school, college, and countless visits now seemed to mock the naive trust one had placed in people who had been systematically lying to me for years. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I gathered courage for a confrontation that would either restore my place in this family or destroy it completely. I chose dinner time deliberately, knowing that Robert and Linda typically gathered with whichever children happened to be visiting on weekday evenings. Through the large front window, I could see Ashley and Derek sitting around the dining table with our parents, sharing what appeared to be a casual family meal of the type I had participated in hundreds of times before discovering the truth about their secret celebrations. The normalcy of the scene felt like salt in fresh wounds, highlighting how easily they could include me in regular family activities while excluding me from the experiences that truly mattered. Walking through the front door without knocking felt like the right choice, given that I had been doing exactly that for 18 years as a supposed family member. The sound of laughter and conversation stopped abruptly when I appeared in the dining room doorway, and 4 pairs of eyes turned toward me with expressions that ranged from surprise to something that looked disturbingly like annoyance. Nobody invited me to sit down, offered me food, or asked how I was doing, which told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was likely to proceed. "We need to talk about the family reunions you've been having without me," I announced, pulling out my phone to display the screenshots I had carefully organized as evidence of their deception. "I've seen the photos, I know about the mountain lodge, and I want to understand why my own family has been deliberately excluding me from events that clearly mean a great deal to all of you." The silence that followed my words was deafening and filled with intention that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. Robert and Linda exchanged a look that spoke of previous conversations about this exact scenario, while Ashley and Derek suddenly became very interested in their dinner plates. Finally, Linda cleared her throat and delivered the words that would shatter my understanding of family bonds forever. "Those reunions are for blood family only, Mackenzie," she said with a coldness I had never heard from the woman I had called mother for 18 years. "We felt it was important to maintain certain traditions and connections that are specifically tied to our biological heritage and shared genetic history." The casual cruelty of her explanation hit me like a sledgehammer, but worse revelations were still coming. Robert leaned back in his chair and folded his arms across his chest in a defensive posture that indicated he had no intention of apologizing for their actions or including me in future family events. When I asked about grandmother's inheritance that I had been told was tied up in legal issues, his expression shifted from defensive to something approaching smugness. "Your grandmother's will was very specific about her intentions for that money," Robert explained with clinical detachment. "She left instructions that her inheritance should benefit her biological grandchildren and their families. Since you're not actually our legal daughter and were never formally adopted through proper channels, you have no claim to any portion of that inheritance." The second betrayal was even more devastating than the first, as I learned that the people I had called parents for 18 years had never actually completed the legal adoption process that would have made me their legitimate daughter. They had allowed me to believe I was fully integrated into their family while maintaining legal and financial barriers that excluded me from the rights and protections that true family membership would have provided. The inheritance from my beloved grandmother, who had always treated me with kindness and inclusion during her lifetime, had been used to fund elaborate reunions specifically designed to exclude me. Derek, the brother I had defended against bullies and supported through his struggles with academic performance, chose that moment to deliver his own crushing blow to my already shattered heart. "Honestly, Mackenzie, it was my idea to keep the reunions family only," he admitted while looking directly at me with eyes that held no trace of the affection I thought we shared. "You never really fit in with the rest of us anyway, and these events are about celebrating our actual family connections." Ashley, who had often sought my professional advice about event planning and had borrowed my ideas for various celebrations, revealed the full extent of her betrayal with obvious satisfaction. "I've been using your event planning suggestions for our reunions," she announced with a smile that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "Your ideas about family bonding activities and meaningful traditions have made our gatherings absolutely perfect." The conversation continued for another hour, with each family member taking turns explaining why my exclusion was justified, necessary, and permanent. They spoke about bloodlines and biological connections, as if genetics determined the capacity for love, loyalty, and belonging. They justified their deception by claiming they were protecting me from the pain of knowing about events I couldn't attend, while simultaneously making it clear that I would never be welcome at future reunions regardless of my knowledge. When I finally gathered enough strength to ask whether our 18 years together had meant anything to them, whether the holidays, birthdays, graduations, and daily life we had shared had created any genuine family bonds, Linda delivered the final devastating blow. "You've always been a responsibility we accepted, not a daughter we chose," she said with the matter-of-fact tone someone might use to discuss the weather. "We did our duty by providing you with food, shelter, and education, but that obligation doesn't extend to including you in our private family celebrations." As I sat in that dining room, surrounded by people who had shaped my entire understanding of love, family, and belonging, I realized that everything I believed about my life had been an elaborate lie designed to make their legal obligation more manageable. They had never intended to include me permanently in their family structure, and they had been planning my eventual exclusion long before these reunions began. Robert made it clear that any attempts to contest their decisions legally would be futile, since they had maintained careful documentation proving my non-adopted status and their legitimate claims to all family assets. Linda warned me that pursuing this matter further could result in restraining orders and complete severance of any remaining connection between us. Ashley and Derek both expressed relief that this conversation had finally happened, indicating they had been eager to stop pretending they considered me their sister. When I finally left that house for what would be the last time, I carried with me not only the devastating knowledge of their betrayal, but also a burning determination to prove that their rejection would not define my worth or destroy my capacity to build something meaningful from the ashes of their cruelty. Little did any of us know that their decision to exclude and humiliate me would ultimately provide the motivation I needed to create something far more successful and fulfilling than anything they had ever achieved together. The weeks following my confrontation with the Hamilton family brought a devastating cascade of consequences that threatened to destroy everything I had worked to build in my professional and personal life. My event coordinating business, which had been thriving due to my reputation for creating meaningful family celebrations, began crumbling as my emotional state made it impossible to maintain the level of service and attention my clients deserved. The irony of losing my ability to bring families together for joyous occasions while processing the destruction of my own family relationships was not lost on me during those dark, seemingly endless days. My first major client cancellation came from the Patterson family, whose golden anniversary celebration I had been planning for 6 months. Mrs. Patterson called on a Tuesday morning to express concern about my recent performance, citing missed phone calls, delayed responses to emails, and a general sense that my heart was no longer fully invested in their special event. She was kind but firm in her decision to hire a different coordinator, and I couldn't find the strength to argue with her assessment or fight to keep the contract that would have paid my rent for 3 months. Within 2 weeks, 3 more clients had canceled their contracts, each citing similar concerns about my reliability and professional demeanor. Word spread quickly through Denver's tight-knit event planning community that Mackenzie Hamilton was experiencing some kind of personal crisis that was affecting her business capabilities. Vendors who had worked with me for years began expressing hesitation about taking on new projects, and referral sources started directing potential clients to other coordinators who seemed more stable and dependable. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. Without the steady income from coordinating fees and vendor commissions, I quickly fell behind on rent for both my apartment and my office space. My landlord, Mrs. Rodriguez, had always been understanding about occasional late payments, but 3 months of missed rent pushed her patience beyond reasonable limits. The eviction notice she delivered personally showed genuine regret, but business realities meant she couldn't continue carrying tenants who couldn't meet their financial obligations. Packing my belongings from the apartment that had been my first independent living space felt like another death, another layer of identity being stripped away by the ripple effects of family betrayal. Everything I owned fit into my car and a small storage unit, reducing my life to the bare essentials needed for basic survival. The business equipment that had once represented my entrepreneurial success now felt like reminders of failure and dreams that were slipping beyond my reach. My salvation came from an unexpected source in the form of Mrs. Chin, my elderly neighbor who had always greeted me with warm smiles and occasional offerings of homemade soup during difficult periods. When she saw me loading boxes into my car with tears streaming down my face, she approached with the kind of practical compassion that cuts through emotional chaos to offer real solutions. Without hesitation, she invited me to stay in her guest room until I could stabilize my situation and rebuild my life. Mrs. Chen's small house on Elm Street became my refuge, but it also introduced me to a woman whose life story would provide the blueprint for my own eventual triumph over family betrayal. As we shared quiet evenings over cups of tea, she gradually revealed her background as a formerly successful restaurant owner whose family business had been destroyed by relatives who excluded her from important decisions and eventually forced her out of the company she had helped build from nothing. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound, Mrs. Chin explained one evening as we sat in her cozy living room, surrounded by photos of the thriving restaurant she had once operated. But it also teaches you who you really are when everything familiar is stripped away. The strength you discover in those moments becomes the foundation for building something better than what you lost. Her story paralleled mine in disturbing ways. She had been excluded from family business meetings, had her contributions minimized and dismissed, and had ultimately been forced out by relatives who claimed she didn't understand the modern needs of their industry. The betrayal had initially devastated her emotionally and financially, but it had also freed her from the obligation to consider people who had never truly valued her contributions or respected her capabilities. The third major betrayal in my story emerged during this period of apparent rock bottom, when Ashley began systematically spreading rumors throughout Denver's event planning community about my supposed mental instability and professional incompetence. Former colleagues started treating me with the careful politeness reserved for people they considered potentially dangerous or unpredictable. Vendors who had once competed for my business began declining to work with me entirely, citing concerns about my ability to honor contracts and maintain professional standards. The psychological warfare Ashley waged against my reputation was both subtle and devastatingly effective. She never made direct accusations that could be proven false or legally challenged. Instead, she expressed concern about my well-being and suggested that my recent behavior indicated I might be experiencing a breakdown that could affect my ability to deliver quality services. Her position as the sister who knew me best gave her words additional credibility among people who didn't understand the true nature of our relationship. Professional isolation compounded my emotional devastation as suppliers refused to work with me, potential clients chose other coordinators without explanation, and industry contacts gradually stopped returning my calls or responding to my emails. The event planning community that had once embraced my creativity and professionalism now treated me like a pariah whose mere presence might somehow contaminate their own reputations and business relationships. My second unexpected ally appeared during this period in the form of Marcus Rivera, a construction contractor who approached me at a coffee shop where I was desperately trying to salvage my remaining client relationships through phone calls and emails. Marcus had overheard enough of my conversations to understand that I was experiencing professional difficulties, and he recognized something in my situation that resonated with his own experiences of family betrayal and business destruction. Marcus shared his story of being forced out of his family's construction company by brothers who had convinced their father that his modern approaches and innovative techniques were threatening traditional family values and established business practices. Like me, he had discovered that people he trusted completely had been planning his exclusion for years while maintaining the pretense of family solidarity and mutual support. His experience of rebuilding from nothing had taught him valuable lessons about resilience, determination, and the power of choosing better allies than the people who happen to share your DNA. The best revenge against people who try to destroy you is building something so successful that their betrayal becomes the catalyst for your greatest achievements, Marcus explained during our first real conversation. Your family gave you the motivation to prove them wrong about everything they believe about your worth and capabilities. Mrs. Chin and Marcus represented something I had never experienced before, chosen family members who valued my potential rather than merely tolerating my presence. They offered practical support, emotional encouragement, and most importantly, genuine belief in my ability to transform devastating betrayal into the foundation for unprecedented success. Their partnership in helping me rebuild my life and business would prove essential for everything that followed. As I gradually stabilized my living situation and began developing plans for professional recovery, I started understanding that my family's rejection might ultimately prove to be the greatest gift they could have given me. Freed from the obligation to maintain relationships with people who had never truly valued me, I could now focus all my energy on building something that would reflect my actual worth rather than their limited assessment of my place in their family hierarchy. The planning phase that began during those quiet evenings with Mrs. Chin and Marcus would eventually evolve into something far more ambitious and successful than anything my supposed family had ever achieved together. Their reunions at expensive mountain lodges would pale in comparison to the venue and business empire I was beginning to envision, fueled by anger, determination, and the unshakable belief that I deserved better than what they had offered me. The intelligence-gathering phase of my recovery began during sleepless nights when anger provided more energy than rest, and I channeled that fury into researching every aspect of my former family's financial situation and business activities. My years as an event coordinator had taught me how to investigate vendors, verify credentials, and uncover information that clients preferred to keep private. skills that proved invaluable when applied to understanding the true scope of the Hamilton family's vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Social media provided the first cracks in their facade of success and stability. Derek's Facebook posts revealed increasingly frequent visits to Denver's casinos, with photos of poker tables and slot machines that suggested recreational gambling had evolved into something more serious and potentially problematic. Ashley's Instagram showed expensive purchases and luxury lifestyle choices that seemed inconsistent with the modest income her small event planning business should have been generating. Robert and Linda's posts about home renovations and luxury vacations indicated they were spending grandmother's inheritance faster than responsible financial management would typically allow. Public record searches revealed even more concerning information about their financial management and business practices. Derek had taken out several personal loans using the family home as collateral, suggesting that his gambling activities had progressed beyond casual entertainment into actual debt accumulation. Ashley's business registration showed several changes in partnership structures and multiple tax liens that indicated cash flow problems and possible mismanagement of client funds. The property records for the Mountain Lodge where they held their reunions showed that Robert and Linda were making monthly payments that consumed a significant portion of their retirement income. Armed with this growing understanding of their financial vulnerabilities, I began developing a comprehensive plan that would compete directly with their reunion activities while simultaneously exposing their business and personal failures to the community that had always respected the Hamilton family name. My strategy focused on building something so superior to their offerings that their exclusion of me would appear foolish and short-sighted to everyone who witnessed our comparative success. The location search for my venue project became an obsession that consumed every spare moment and drove me to explore properties throughout the Denver metropolitan area. I needed something spectacular enough to overshadow their Mountain Lodge while remaining financially feasible given my current limited resources and damaged credit history. After 3 weeks of intensive searching, I discovered the abandoned Blackwood Mansion on the outskirts of town, a historic property that had been vacant for 5 years due to legal complications and renovation challenges. The Blackwood Mansion represented everything my venue needed to succeed: impressive architecture that photographed beautifully for social media, extensive grounds suitable for large-scale events, and enough rooms to accommodate multiple families simultaneously. The property had been built by a wealthy mining family in the early 1900s and featured original hardwood floors, ornate ceiling details, and a grand staircase that would serve as the perfect backdrop for wedding photography and family portraits. Most importantly, I discovered that Robert and Linda had actually considered purchasing the Blackwood Mansion 3 years earlier for their own event hosting purposes, but had rejected it as too expensive and requiring too much renovation work to be practical. Their decision to choose the safer option of renting the Mountain Lodge had been financially prudent, but ultimately limited their long-term options for hosting larger and more impressive family gatherings. Securing financing for the mansion purchase required every negotiation skill I had developed during years of coordinating events and managing vendor relationships. Traditional banks viewed me as a high-risk borrower due to my recent business troubles and lack of substantial collateral, but Mrs. Chen's offer to serve as co-signer opened doors that would have remained permanently closed otherwise. Her solid credit history and property assets provided the security banks needed to approve a loan that covered both the purchase price and initial renovation costs. Marcus's construction expertise proved invaluable during the property inspection process, as he identified structural issues and renovation priorities that would have overwhelmed someone without his knowledge and experience. His estimates for bringing the mansion up to modern safety codes and event hosting standards were significantly lower than quotes from other contractors, partly because of his personal investment in seeing my project succeed and partly because of his connections with suppliers who offered preferential pricing for projects they believed in. The renovation team Marcus assembled consisted primarily of contractors and tradespeople who had their own experiences with family business betrayals and understood the emotional significance of what we were attempting to build. These men and women worked with a level of dedication and attention to detail that went far beyond normal professional obligations, treating the mansion restoration as their own personal statement about the power of chosen family and mutual support over genetic relationships and inherited obligations. Community support for the project began organically as word spread about the young woman who was transforming the historic Blackwood Mansion into a premier event venue despite being rejected by her own family. Local suppliers offered discounts on materials and equipment, understanding that supporting my success represented a stand against the kind of family cruelty that many people had experienced in their own lives. The narrative of triumph over betrayal resonated throughout Denver's business community and generated the kind of grassroots enthusiasm that money couldn't purchase. Mrs. Chen's connections within the local restaurant and hospitality industries provided access to vendors, suppliers, and service providers who were excited to be part of a project that combined historical preservation with modern event hosting capabilities. Her decades of business experience helped me avoid common pitfalls and develop systems for managing everything from catering logistics to client communications that would ensure smooth operations from the very beginning. The first major victory in our renovation process came when Marcus's crew discovered original stained glass windows hidden behind decades of temporary covering. Restoring these windows to their original brilliance provided a focal point for the main reception hall that no other venue in the Denver area could match. The photographs of these windows that we shared on social media generated immediate interest from potential clients and established the mansion's reputation as something truly special and unique. As renovation work progressed ahead of schedule and under budget, I began developing the business plan that would position Blackwood Mansion as the premier family event destination in Colorado. Unlike the Hamilton family's exclusive retreats that deliberately limited participation, my venue would welcome chosen families, blended families, adoptive families, and anyone else who understood that love and commitment matter more than genetic connections and inherited obligations. The marketing strategy one developed emphasized themes of inclusion, celebration, and the creation of new traditions for people who refuse to be defined by others' limited understanding of family relationships. Every promotional material we created would implicitly contrast our welcoming approach with the exclusive mentality that had led to my own rejection and abandonment by people who should have valued my contributions and appreciated my loyalty. The anticipation building within Denver's event planning community began generating advance bookings even before our official opening date was announced. Families who had heard about our project through word of mouth started making inquiries about availability for weddings, anniversaries, and reunions that would create positive memories instead of perpetuating cycles of exclusion and discrimination. Everything was falling into place exactly as I had envisioned, but I knew that my former family's response to my success would escalate beyond passive observation once they understood the full scope of what I was building. Their history of betrayal and deception had taught me to expect sabotage, interference, and outright attacks designed to prevent my venue from succeeding and exposing their own failures and limitations. The Hamilton family's discovery of my venue project came through the same social media channels that had originally exposed their secret reunions to me, creating a perfect circle of information warfare that they had inadvertently initiated. Ashley's friend from the event planning industry sent her screenshots of my renovation progress photos, along with local newspaper coverage of the Blackwood Mansion restoration project that had begun attracting attention from preservation societies and business development organizations throughout the Denver area. Within 24 hours of learning about my plans, the family launched a coordinated campaign of interference designed to sabotage my project before it could threaten their own reputation or expose their treatment of me to broader scrutiny. Derek's first attack was crude and directly criminal, involving late-night visits to the mansion construction site where he vandalized equipment, stole materials, and attempted to damage renovated areas that represented weeks of careful work by Marcus and his team. The morning I arrived to find spray paint covering the restored stained glass windows felt like a physical assault on everything I was trying to build. Derek had chosen the most beautiful and irreplaceable elements of our renovation as targets for his destructive rage, understanding that damaging these windows would set back our timeline and potentially cost thousands of dollars we couldn't afford to lose. Security cameras that Marcus had installed the previous week provided clear evidence of Derek's identity, but proving his involvement legally required police reports and investigations that would delay our progress even if they ultimately led to criminal charges. Marcus's response to the vandalism demonstrated the loyalty and commitment that characterized our chosen family relationships versus the cruelty I had experienced from my supposed relatives. Instead of expressing anger or frustration about the setbacks, he immediately called his entire crew to assess the damage and develop repair plans that would restore everything Derek had destroyed. The stained glass windows required specialized restoration techniques that would add weeks to our timeline, but Marcus knew craftspeople who agreed to prioritize our project over other commitments. The fourth major betrayal in my story emerged when Jenna, overcome by guilt about her previous complicity in my exclusion, attempted to make amends by sharing my complete business plan with Ashley during what she thought was a confidential conversation between friends. Jenna genuinely believed that providing Ashley with detailed information about my venue plans might encourage family reconciliation and eventual inclusion in their future activities. Her naive assumption that Ashley would respond to my success with pride rather than competitive hostility revealed how completely she misunderstood the nature of their calculated rejection. Ashley used the intelligence Jenna provided to launch her own sophisticated campaign of professional sabotage, contacting my vendors and suppliers with fabricated stories about my financial instability and inability to honor contractual obligations. Her position within Denver's event planning community lent credibility to her claims, and several key suppliers canceled their agreements with us based solely on her warnings about potential payment problems and professional unreliability. The loss of our preferred catering company was particularly devastating, as they had been working with us for months to develop menu options that would complement the mansion's elegant atmosphere and historical significance. Their sudden withdrawal left us scrambling to find alternative options just weeks before our planned soft opening, and Ashley's influence meant that several other catering companies refused to consider working with us at all. Linda and Robert's legal assault represented the most serious threat to our project's survival, as they hired expensive attorneys to challenge our right to operate a commercial venue on the Blackwood Mansion property. Their legal strategy focused on zoning restrictions and historical preservation regulations that could potentially force us to cease operations before we had generated enough revenue to fight extended court battles. The legal fees alone threatened to bankrupt our project, even if we ultimately prevailed in court. Their attorneys filed injunctions that temporarily prevented us from hosting any events, while zoning and preservation issues were resolved through official channels. This legal maneuvering was designed to destroy our business relationships and financial stability by preventing us from generating revenue while still requiring us to pay ongoing renovation costs and loan payments that consumed our limited resources. The near loss of our major investor came when persistent rumors about family disputes and potential legal complications reached Harrison Industries, the real estate development company that had agreed to provide additional funding for our expansion plans. Mr. Harrison called an emergency meeting to discuss concerns about associating his company with a project that seemed to be generating negative publicity and potential legal entanglements that could reflect poorly on his other business interests. During that meeting, I realized that my family's coordinated attack was more sophisticated and dangerous than I had initially understood. They weren't simply trying to compete with my venue or express disapproval of my independence. They were actively working to destroy my project completely, using every resource and relationship they could access to prevent me from succeeding and potentially exposing their own failures and cruelties to public examination. The mysterious fire that consumed half of our main reception hall occurred on a Wednesday evening in late September, just days before our planned media preview event. The Denver Fire Department's initial investigation suggested electrical problems related to renovation work, but the pattern of damage and the timing of the incident raised questions about potential arson that couldn't be definitively answered without extensive forensic analysis that we couldn't afford to commission. Marcus and I arrived at the mansion that morning to find smoke still rising from the charred remains of our beautiful reception hall, where the restored hardwood floors and original ceiling details had been reduced to piles of ash and twisted metal. Months of careful restoration work had been erased overnight. Along with our hopes of opening on schedule and generating the revenue we needed to maintain our loan payments and operational expenses. The insurance investigation stretched on for weeks while we remained unable to proceed with repairs or resume renovation work on the damaged areas. Our insurance policy covered fire damage, but processing claims required detailed investigations and paperwork that delayed our access to replacement funds while our ongoing expenses continued accumulating. The timing couldn't have been worse, as we had committed to hosting our first major event within 6 weeks of the fire. Community support rallied around our project in ways that demonstrated the power of chosen family relationships and shared values over genetic connections and inherited obligations. Local businesses donated materials and labor to help repair fire damage, understanding that supporting our success represented a stand against the kind of family cruelty that many people had experienced in their own lives. Volunteers worked weekend after weekend to clear debris and prepare surfaces for restoration, treating our project as their own personal mission. Mrs. Chin used her connections within Denver's business community to organize fundraising events that helped offset our unexpected repair costs and maintained community enthusiasm for our eventual opening. Her decades of relationship building within the restaurant and hospitality industries generated support from people who had never met me personally, but understood the importance of supporting entrepreneurs who refused to be defeated by family, betrayal, and sabotage. The additional security measures we implemented after the fire included surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and patrol services that would document any future attempts at sabotage or vandalism. Marcus insisted on installing these protections at his own expense, understanding that protecting our project meant protecting the dreams and investments of everyone who had supported us during this difficult period. As we worked to repair fire damage and restore our timeline for opening, I realized that my family's escalating attacks were actually strengthening our resolve and building community support that would ultimately make our venue more successful than it would have been without their interference. Their attempts to destroy my project were inadvertently creating the publicity and emotional investment that no amount of traditional marketing could have achieved. The battle was far from over, but each attack they launched taught me more about their weaknesses and vulnerabilities while demonstrating the strength and loyalty of the people who had chosen to support my success rather than their narrow definition of family relationships. Everything they did to stop me was actually providing the motivation and resources I needed to build something that would permanently overshadow their pathetic reunion activities and expose their cruelty to everyone who mattered in our community. The private investigator I hired came recommended by Mrs. Chen's attorney, a thorough professional named Detective Sarah Williams who specialized in family financial disputes and had extensive experience documenting the kind of systematic deception and fraud that I suspected the Hamilton family had been perpetrating for years. Her background in forensic accounting and financial investigation provided exactly the expertise needed to uncover the truth about grandmother's inheritance and the legal irregularities surrounding my adoption status. Detective Williams approached the investigation with methodical precision, beginning with public record searches that revealed patterns of financial mismanagement and potential fraud that extended far beyond their exclusion of me from family events. Derek's gambling debts were more extensive than I had initially realized, with multiple loans from different financial institutions that used family assets as collateral without proper authorization from all parties with legal interests in those properties. The evidence she uncovered about Derek's gambling addiction painted a picture of someone whose compulsive behavior had spiraled beyond casual entertainment into serious financial self-destruction that threatened the entire family's stability. Casino records showed losses exceeding $50,000 over the past 2 years, with increasing frequency of visits and larger bets that indicated escalating desperation and lack of impulse control. Credit card statements revealed cash advances taken at gambling establishments, along with payments to online betting sites that suggested his addiction had expanded beyond physical casino visits. Ashley's business practices proved even more problematic from a legal standpoint, with Detective Williams discovering evidence of client fund misappropriation and fraudulent billing practices that violated professional ethics standards and potentially constituted criminal behavior. Several former clients had filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau about services they had paid for but never received. And Ashley's business bank account showed patterns of deposits and withdrawals that suggested she was using client payments for personal expenses rather than the contracted services. The most damaging evidence emerged from Ashley's client files, which revealed that she had been billing families for event planning services while subcontracting the actual work to other coordinators at significantly lower rates and keeping the difference as profit. This practice violated her service contracts and potentially constituted fraud, especially in cases where clients believed they were receiving Ashley's personal attention and expertise rather than supervision of work performed by less experienced substitutes. Robert and Linda's financial records revealed irresponsible management of grandmother's inheritance that bordered on deliberate waste, with luxury purchases and expensive vacations that consumed assets intended to benefit multiple generations of family members. Their monthly expenses exceeded their retirement income by significant amounts, indicating they were treating inheritance funds as personal income rather than family assets that should be preserved and invested responsibly for future needs. The strategic leak of this information to the Hamilton family's social circle required careful timing and presentation to maximize impact while avoiding potential defamation claims that could undermine my position or create legal complications for Detective Williams and myself. Mrs. Chen's connections within Denver's business community provided the perfect channels for sharing information about financial irregularities and professional misconduct that would spread naturally through social networks without appearing to originate from vengeful family disputes. The first crack in their public facade appeared when Derek's gambling debts forced Robert and Linda to refinance their home mortgage at unfavorable terms that consumed most of their remaining equity and created monthly payments they couldn't afford on their retirement income. News of their financial difficulties spread quickly through their church community and neighborhood associations, where the Hamilton family had previously been respected for their apparent stability and traditional family values. My venue project gained significant momentum during this period as media attention increased and community support solidified around the narrative of triumph over family betrayal. Local newspapers ran feature stories about the young entrepreneur who was transforming the historic Blackwood Mansion into a premier event destination despite systematic sabotage from relatives who had rejected her contributions and excluded her from family celebrations. The Denver Post published a comprehensive article titled "Phoenix Rising. Local Woman Builds Dream Venue After Family Rejection" that detailed my background, the mansion renovation project, and the broader themes of chosen family versus genetic relationships that resonated with readers throughout the metropolitan area. The article generated dozens of inquiries about booking events at the mansion and established our venue as a symbol of resilience and determination that attracted clients who shared similar values about family relationships and personal success. Our first major booking came from the Morrison family, whose golden anniversary celebration had originally been canceled from my previous event planning business during my period of emotional crisis following the family confrontation. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison had followed my story through local media coverage and specifically chose the Blackwood Mansion for their rescheduled celebration because they wanted to support someone who understood the importance of family loyalty and commitment over genetic connections and inherited obligations. The Morrison anniversary event would serve as our soft opening and demonstration of the mansion's capabilities, with guest lists that included influential families throughout Denver who would evaluate our services and potentially book their own celebrations if we exceeded their expectations. The pressure to deliver an absolutely perfect event was enormous, but Marcus and Mrs. Chin helped me understand that this opportunity represented validation of everything we had worked to achieve despite the obstacles and sabotage attempts. Ashley's business collapse accelerated as her professional misconduct became known throughout Denver's event planning community, and former clients began demanding refunds for services they had paid for but never received. Several families filed formal complaints with state licensing boards and professional organizations, creating legal complications that threatened her ability to continue operating any kind of event planning business in Colorado. The loss of Ashley's income combined with Derek's mounting gambling debts created financial pressures that forced Robert and Linda to make increasingly desperate decisions about their remaining assets and future security. Their sale of grandmother's house represented the most visible symbol of their family's financial decline, as neighbors and friends realized that the people they had respected for their apparent stability and success were actually struggling with serious money management problems and family dysfunction. Community perception of the Hamilton family shifted dramatically as details of their treatment of me became known alongside evidence of their financial irresponsibility and professional failures. People who had previously admired their apparent family unity began understanding that their exclusive reunions and traditional values rhetoric masked cruel rejection of someone who had contributed to their family for 18 years without ever receiving genuine acceptance or appreciation. The contrast between their declining reputation and my growing success created exactly the kind of poetic justice that I had dreamed about during the darkest days following their rejection. Every newspaper article about the mansion renovation project and every social media post celebrating our progress served as evidence that their assessment of my worth and capabilities had been completely wrong. Marcus and Mrs. Chin became integral partners in the venue business rather than simply supporters of my personal recovery, with ownership stakes and operational responsibilities that reflected their contributions to our success and their commitment to the values we represented. Our chosen family business model demonstrated that loyalty, hard work, and mutual respect could create stronger and more successful relationships than genetic connections and inherited obligations. As the Morrison anniversary celebration approached, I felt confident that our venue would exceed every expectation and establish the Blackwood Mansion as the premier family event destination in Colorado. The Hamilton family's attempts to destroy my project had ultimately provided the motivation, publicity, and community support that ensured our success would far surpass anything they had achieved with their exclusive reunions and inherited money. Everything was in place for the final phase of my transformation from rejected family member to successful entrepreneur whose achievements would permanently overshadow the people who had tried to define my worth according to their narrow understanding of family, relationships, and genetic superiority. The breakthrough in my legal case came on a Tuesday morning in November when Detective Williams called with information that would change everything I thought I knew about grandmother's will and my legal status within the Hamilton family structure. Her voice carried an excitement that immediately told me she had uncovered something significant, something that would provide the foundation for legal action against people who had systematically lied to me about my rights and inheritance for years. "Mackenzie, you need to sit down for this conversation," Detective Williams began, her professional tone unable to completely mask the satisfaction she felt about delivering justice to someone who had been so thoroughly wronged. "I've found the original version of your grandmother's will, and it's completely different from the document your parents have been using to justify excluding you from your inheritance." The true will, which had been filed with a different attorney and hidden from family members for over 3 years, specifically named me as an equal beneficiary alongside Ashley and Derek, with language that clearly indicated grandmother's intention to include me fully in family financial legacy regardless of my adoption status or genetic relationships. She had used phrases like "my beloved granddaughter Mackenzie" and "equal inheritance for all 3 grandchildren" that left no ambiguity about her feelings toward me or her wishes for distribution of family assets. More shocking than the inheritance revelation was Detective Williams's discovery of the complete adoption paperwork that Robert and Linda had hidden from me since childhood. The documents proved that they had indeed completed full legal adoption proceedings when I was 8 years old, making me their legitimate daughter with all the rights and protections that status provided. Their claims about never formally adopting me had been deliberate lies designed to justify their exclusion of me from family benefits and inheritance rights. The legal implications of these discoveries were staggering, as they provided evidence of fraud, inheritance theft, and systematic deception that could result in both civil litigation and criminal charges against multiple family members. Robert and Linda had knowingly concealed my legal adoption status while misrepresenting the terms of grandmother's will to exclude me from inheritance rights that legally belonged to me. Their actions constituted deliberate fraud that had damaged me financially and emotionally for years. Detective Williams had also uncovered correspondence between grandmother and her attorney that revealed her specific concerns about Robert and Linda's treatment of me and her desire to ensure that I would be protected financially even if family relationships deteriorated after her death. One letter specifically mentioned her observations about their different treatment of me compared to their biological children and her determination to prevent them from using my adoption status to justify unequal treatment in inheritance matters. Your grandmother saw this coming, Detective Williams explained as she shared photocopies of correspondence that brought tears to my eyes. She knew your parents might try to exclude you, and she specifically structured her will to prevent exactly what they've been doing for the past 3 years. The hidden attorney who had prepared grandmother's original will had maintained copies of all relevant documents in secure storage, waiting for someone to request access to the complete file rather than relying on summaries and excerpts provided by family members. This attorney's meticulous record-keeping had preserved evidence of the Hamilton family's fraud while protecting my legal rights even when I didn't know those rights existed. Armed with this legal ammunition, I faced a choice between pursuing criminal charges that could send Robert and Linda to prison for inheritance fraud or negotiating a settlement that would recover my stolen inheritance while allowing them to maintain their freedom and dignity. Detective Williams advised me that criminal prosecution would be lengthy and expensive, while civil litigation could recover damages more quickly and provide the financial resources needed to expand the venue business and secure my future independence. The confrontation I had been planning took on new urgency as the Morrison anniversary celebration approached and my former family's financial situation became increasingly desperate. Derek's gambling debts had reached crisis levels, forcing him to consider bankruptcy proceedings that would expose the full extent of his financial irresponsibility to public scrutiny and potentially implicate family members who had enabled his addiction through loans and financial support. Ashley's business had completely collapsed under the weight of client complaints and professional misconduct allegations, leaving her with significant debts to vendors and suppliers who had provided services she couldn't afford to pay for. Her reputation within Denver's event planning community was permanently damaged, and her attempts to find employment with other companies had been unsuccessful due to the ethical violations that had become known throughout the industry. The venue's soft opening with the Morrison anniversary celebration exceeded every expectation I had dared to have about our capabilities and potential for success. The restored mansion provided a stunning backdrop for their 50-year love story, with photography opportunities and elegant spaces that created exactly the kind of magical experience that families remember forever. Every detail worked flawlessly, from the catering service to the entertainment coordination, demonstrating that our venue could deliver superior experiences compared to anything available in the Denver area. Media coverage of the Morrison event brought additional attention to our venue and the broader story of triumph over family betrayal that had captivated local audiences for months. Television news crews filmed interviews with celebration guests who praised both the mansion's beauty and the exceptional service they had received, generating publicity that no amount of traditional advertising could have achieved. The success of our soft opening coincided perfectly with my family's discovery of the legal evidence that would destroy their fraudulent claims about inheritance rights and adoption status. When Detective Williams served them with official notice of our legal findings and intent to pursue recovery of stolen inheritance funds, their response revealed the full extent of their desperation and moral bankruptcy. Robert and Linda's first reaction was to claim that the documents were forgeries or that grandmother had been mentally incompetent when she made her original will, arguments that would require expensive legal proceedings to challenge and would expose them to additional fraud charges if they couldn't substantiate their claims. Their attorney advised them that pursuing this strategy would likely result in criminal prosecution and complete financial ruin, making settlement negotiations their only viable option for avoiding imprisonment. Derek and Ashley's attempt to physically destroy venue equipment during our soft opening represented their final, desperate effort to prevent my success from exposing their own failures and criminal behavior. Security cameras captured every moment of their coordinated attack on our property, providing evidence that would support criminal charges for vandalism, trespassing, and conspiracy to commit property destruction. The irony of their destruction attempt occurring during an event celebrating 50 years of marriage and family commitment was not lost on the guests who witnessed their behavior or the media representatives who reported on the incident. Their actions provided perfect contrast between the positive family values our venue promoted and the jealousy and vindictiveness that characterized their approach to family relationships. Police arrested Derek and Ashley on the scene, with charges that would add criminal records to their already devastating financial and professional problems. Their mugshots appeared in local newspapers alongside articles about the successful anniversary celebration they had attempted to destroy, creating public relations disasters that permanently damaged whatever remained of their reputations within Denver's social and business communities. The final confrontation with Robert and Linda occurred in the mansion's restored library, where they arrived with their attorney to discuss settlement terms that would avoid criminal prosecution while recovering the inheritance funds they had stolen from me. Their defeat was complete and undeniable, with legal evidence that proved their guilt and financial desperation that eliminated their ability to continue fighting against superior legal and financial resources. Part 9. The Final Victory ***. The official grand opening of Blackwood Mansion Event Venue took place on a crisp Saturday morning in December, with community leaders, media representatives, and potential clients gathering to celebrate not just a new business venture, but a powerful symbol of resilience triumphing over family betrayal and systematic exclusion. The restored mansion gleamed in the winter sunlight, every detail perfected through months of careful renovation and dedication from people who understood that our success represented something far more significant than a typical business opening. Mayor Richardson delivered opening remarks that emphasized themes of community support, entrepreneurial determination, and the importance of chosen family relationships over genetic connections that may lack genuine love and commitment. Her presence at the ceremony legitimized our venue within Denver's business community while providing official recognition of the inspiring story that had motivated our project from its darkest beginning through its triumphant completion. The first official event hosted at our venue was the wedding of Jennifer and Michael Patterson, whose ceremony had been planned around our grand opening timeline specifically because they wanted their marriage celebration to be part of our success story. The couple had followed my journey through local media coverage and chose Blackwood Mansion because they believed in supporting businesses that represented positive values about family relationships and personal triumph over adversity. Their wedding photographs showcased every aspect of our venue's capabilities, from the elegant ceremony space in our restored ballroom to the intimate reception areas that could accommodate everything from small family gatherings to elaborate celebrations for hundreds of guests. The professional photography captured the mansion's stunning architecture and beautiful grounds, creating promotional material that would attract future clients while documenting the perfect execution of our first major event. Media coverage of the grand opening and wedding celebration generated national attention as news outlets across the country picked up the story of the young woman who had built a successful business empire after being rejected by her own family. Magazine articles, television interviews, and online features spread our message about chosen family and personal determination to audiences far beyond Colorado, creating business opportunities and partnership possibilities that exceeded every expectation I had dared to have. The legal resolution of inheritance fraud charges against Robert and Linda resulted in a settlement that recovered not only the stolen inheritance funds, but additional damages for years of emotional distress and financial harm caused by their systematic deception. The settlement amount provided sufficient capital to expand our venue operations, purchase additional property for outdoor events, and establish the scholarship fund for foster children that would honor grandmother's memory through positive action rather than family exclusion. Robert and Linda's public disgrace was complete as details of the settlement became known throughout their social and professional circles. Their fraudulent behavior and cruel treatment of an adopted daughter who had loved and trusted them unconditionally became subjects of community discussion that permanently damaged their reputations and social standing within groups that had previously respected them as examples of traditional family values and stability. Derek's arrest for vandalism and destruction of property led to criminal convictions that added legal consequences to the financial and personal problems that had already destroyed his standing within the family and community. His gambling addiction treatment became court-mandated rather than voluntary, forcing him to confront the compulsive behavior that had contributed to the family's financial crisis and emotional dysfunction. Ashley's complete business failure and professional ostracism within Denver's event planning community represented poetic justice for someone who had tried to destroy my reputation through rumors and professional sabotage. Her attempts to find employment with other event planning companies were unsuccessful due to the ethical violations and criminal charges that had become known throughout the industry, leaving her with limited options for rebuilding any kind of professional career. The contrast between Ashley's professional downfall and my business success provided exactly the kind of vindication I had dreamed about during the darkest period following their rejection and exclusion. Every positive review our venue received, every successful event we hosted, and every client who praised our services represented evidence that their assessment of my abilities and potential had been completely wrong. Community support for our venue continued growing as families throughout Colorado discovered that Blackwood Mansion offered superior facilities and services compared to traditional venues that focused primarily on aesthetics rather than meaningful celebration of family relationships and personal milestones. Our reputation for creating inclusive, welcoming experiences attracted clients who shared our values about chosen family and personal determination over inherited privilege and genetic superiority. The expansion of our business model to include event planning services, catering coordination, and family reunion facilitation created additional revenue streams while employing people who had experienced their own family betrayals and understood the importance of supporting clients who valued love and commitment over biological relationships and traditional family structures. Our staff became ambassadors for the chosen family philosophy that defined our venue's mission and attracted clients who wanted their celebrations to reflect similar values. Mrs. Chin and Marcus's partnership in the venue business evolved into ownership stakes that reflected their essential contributions to our success and their commitment to the values that guided our operations. Their transition from allies during crisis to business partners in triumph demonstrated the strength and loyalty that characterized chosen family relationships compared to the conditional acceptance and eventual rejection that had defined my experience with genetic relatives. The annual Chosen Family Celebration we established for people who had been rejected by biological relatives became one of our most meaningful and well-attended events, bringing together adoptees, foster children, LGBTQ individuals, and anyone else who understood that family relationships should be based on love and mutual respect rather than shared DNA and inherited obligations. These celebrations created community connections and support networks that extended far beyond our venue, while reinforcing the message that rejection by one family can lead to acceptance by better families. The scholarship fund established with recovered inheritance money provided educational opportunities for foster children and adopted youth who faced challenges similar to those I had experienced during my own journey toward independence and success. Grandmother's money was finally being used to support and include vulnerable young people rather than funding exclusive celebrations that deliberately excluded family members who needed support and acceptance. As I stood in the mansion's restored ballroom during our first anniversary celebration, surrounded by clients who had become friends and employees who had become chosen family members, I realized that the Hamilton family's rejection had ultimately provided the greatest gift they could have given me. Their cruelty had freed me from the obligation to maintain relationships with people who had never valued my contributions or appreciated my loyalty, allowing me to build something far more meaningful and successful than anything they had achieved through their inherited money and exclusive attitudes. The venue's success had exceeded every financial projection and operational goal we had established during the planning phase, with bookings scheduled months in advance and client referrals that eliminated the need for traditional advertising or marketing efforts. Our reputation for excellence and inclusivity had created demand that required careful management to maintain quality, while accommodating the growing number of families who wanted to celebrate their milestones in our beautiful and welcoming environment. Part 10. Resolution and Life Lesson ***. 2 years have passed since the grand opening of Blackwood Mansion, and the transformation in my life feels like something from a fairy tale, except this success story was built through determination, hard work, and the support of people who chose to believe in my potential rather than accepting others' limited assessment of my worth. The venue now hosts over 200 events annually, with a waiting list that extends 18 months for premium dates and seasonal celebrations that have become traditions for families throughout Colorado and neighboring states. The business expansion has exceeded every projection I dared to make during those dark days when I was sleeping in Mrs. Chen's guest room and wondering whether I would ever recover from the devastation of family betrayal and professional sabotage. We've purchased the adjacent property to accommodate outdoor weddings and garden parties, built additional guest suites for destination celebrations, and established partnerships with luxury vendors who share our commitment to creating meaningful experiences rather than simply collecting fees for basic services. Mrs. Chen's health has improved dramatically since becoming an integral part of our venue operations, as her sense of purpose and daily engagement with celebrating families has provided energy and motivation that medical treatments alone could never have achieved. Her wisdom about family relationships and business management continues guiding our decision-making processes, while her connections within Denver's hospitality industry have opened doors to opportunities and partnerships that strengthen our market position and operational capabilities. Marcus and I have discovered that our professional partnership has evolved into something deeper and more personal, built on shared values about family loyalty, personal integrity, and the importance of supporting people who refuse to be defined by others' expectations or limitations. Our relationship developed naturally through months of working together toward common goals, creating the kind of trust and mutual respect that forms the foundation for lasting partnerships in both business and personal life. The venue has become more than just a successful business enterprise. It serves as a community center for people who understand that family relationships should be based on choice, commitment, and genuine affection rather than genetic connections and inherited obligations. Our events attract clients who have overcome their own challenges with family acceptance, creating an environment where chosen family relationships are celebrated and honored rather than treated as secondary alternatives to biological connections. The scholarship fund established with my recovered inheritance money has provided educational opportunities for over 50 foster children and adopted youth, helping them pursue college degrees and professional training that will enable them to build successful lives despite early experiences with family disruption and abandonment. These young people understand that academic and professional achievement can provide independence and security that protect against future betrayal and exclusion by people who should offer unconditional support. Robert and Linda's exile from Denver's social circles became complete as the full extent of their fraudulent behavior and cruel treatment became known throughout communities where they had previously been respected as examples of traditional family values and stability. Their former friends and neighbors gradually distanced themselves from people whose actions contradicted everything they claimed to believe about family relationships and moral behavior. The irony of their situation isn't lost on me. People who had rejected me for not being real family ultimately lost the respect and acceptance of everyone who mattered to them, while I gained a chosen family and community support that provides infinitely more love and loyalty than they had ever offered me during 18 years of conditional acceptance and eventual rejection. Derek's recovery from gambling addiction has been slow and difficult, complicated by the legal consequences of his destructive behavior and the financial devastation he caused for himself and his family. His court-mandated treatment program requires acknowledging the harm he caused to others, including his role in the family's systematic exclusion and sabotage of someone who had never done anything to deserve such treatment. Ashley's attempts to rebuild her professional reputation have been unsuccessful, as the event planning industry in Colorado maintains institutional memory of her ethical violations and fraudulent business practices. Her current employment in retail represents a dramatic reduction in income and professional status that serves as permanent reminder of the consequences of choosing jealousy and sabotage over support and collaboration. The annual Chosen Family Celebration has grown into a regional event that attracts hundreds of people who have created meaningful relationships outside traditional family structures, including adoptees, foster youth, LGBTQ individuals, military families, and anyone else who understands that love and commitment matter more than genetic connections and inherited obligations. These celebrations have created lasting friendships and support networks that demonstrate the power of chosen relationships over biological accidents. My perspective on family relationships has been permanently transformed by experiences that force me to distinguish between people who claim to love you and people who actually demonstrate love through consistent actions and genuine support during difficult times. The Hamilton family's rejection taught me that genetic relationships provide no guarantee of loyalty, acceptance, or emotional security, while Mrs. Chin and Marcus proved that chosen family members can offer deeper love and more reliable support than people who happen to share your DNA. The business success we've achieved provides more than just financial security. It represents validation that my worth and capabilities were never accurately assessed by people whose narrow understanding of family relationships prevented them from recognizing or appreciating my contributions to their lives. Every successful event we host, every satisfied client who refers friends to our venue, and every positive review we receive serves as evidence that their rejection reflected their limitations rather than my inadequacies. The venue's reputation has attracted attention from hospitality industry publications and business development organizations interested in our model of combining historical preservation with inclusive family celebration philosophies. Speaking opportunities and consulting requests have provided platforms for sharing my story while encouraging other people who have experienced family betrayal to pursue their own paths toward independence and success rather than accepting others' definitions of their worth and potential. Looking toward the future, I see opportunities for expanding our venue concept to other cities where families need spaces that celebrate chosen relationships and inclusive definitions of family commitment rather than exclusive traditions based on genetic superiority and inherited privilege. The demand for venues that welcome all types of families continues growing as society evolves beyond traditional structures and embraces diverse approaches to creating meaningful relationships and lasting bonds. The most important lesson I've learned through this journey is that betrayal by one family can lead to acceptance by better families, and that rejection from people who should love you unconditionally can free you to build relationships with people who actually understand the value of loyalty, commitment, and mutual support. The Hamilton family's cruelty ultimately provided the motivation and opportunity one needed to discover my true capabilities and create something far more meaningful than anything I could have achieved while remaining dependent on their conditional acceptance and limited vision of my potential. As I write this final reflection while sitting in the mansion's restored library, surrounded by photographs of hundreds of celebrations we've hosted for families who chose love over genetics and commitment over convenience, I feel grateful for every moment of pain and struggle that led to this point of success and fulfillment. The people who tried to destroy me ultimately gave me the greatest gift possible: freedom to build a life that reflects my actual worth rather than their inadequate understanding of family relationships and personal value. To anyone who has experienced family betrayal or exclusion, remember that their rejection says nothing about your worth and everything about their limitations. The family that matters most is the one you choose and build through shared values, mutual respect, and genuine love rather than inherited obligations and genetic accidents. Sometimes the greatest success comes from losing people who never deserved your loyalty in the first place. Have you ever experienced family betrayal or had to build your own chosen family after being rejected by relatives? Share your story in the comments below, and let's create a community of support for people who understand that love is something you choose to give and receive rather than something you inherit through DNA. If this story inspired you or reminded you that rejection can become the foundation for greater success, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and building meaningful relationships despite family dysfunction. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by people who can't recognize their value, and remember that the best revenge against betrayal is building a life so successful that their rejection becomes irrelevant. Thank you for joining me on this journey from rejection to triumph, and I wish you the courage to build your own chosen family and the determination to prove wrong everyone who has ever underestimated your potential for success and happiness.